Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and do our very first project. We're going to be doing it virtually here. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to our first assignment, which is how to draw hands. We're going to start off with the easy stuff, right? We're going to do hands, and we're going to do it using the Loomis method. There's a number of different drawing methods out there. The Loomis method, or just the idea of drawing with form as opposed to kind of sketching. So, for example, if I want to draw, say, a fist, right? I'm drawing like a superhero and I'm going to pop them, right? So if I'm drawing a fist, normally you might think of trying to draw like the outside and trying to kind of find, you know, the drawing somewhere in here and draw with these outlines, right? And sometimes you can do okay with that. You can get it kind of close enough that you can kind of see the hand in there somewhere. The only problem whenever you're drawing with outlines like this, this drawing being an ideal version here, the only big problem is what you can tell really quickly. One, I'm using really, really scratchy lines. This back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. We do not want to do that, okay? Two, this is very flat, right? It's very two-dimensional. Even if I go back and add some good shading and things, it's always going to be a very two-dimensional looking drawing, and that's just not really beneficial for anything that we want to do. So instead, we want to be able to kind of be more specific, more direct with our drawing, and think in 3 dimensions. That's really going to be the big key. How can I think in 3 dimensions, right? So first things first, let's get rid of these scratchy lines. When you're drawing, you want to do a couple things. First, choke back on your pencil, okay? You don't need to be holding it way up close. You're not taking math notes or anything, okay? Instead, choke back. I want you to kind of get these nice long lines, okay? More specifically, try not to rest on the palm here of your hand. Instead, try to rest on your pinky finger, and that way you can kind of get your entire wrist, as well as your fingers, as well as your elbow, as well as your shoulder. You want to use all of these joints at once, and that's why you want to draw with larger paper. The paper I'm using here is just 8.5 by 11. It's a little too small for our purposes. But whenever I'm drawing, I want to try to kind of, almost like I'm drawing with a sword. I'm cutting across the paper, right? Cut across the paper. Nice straight lines. It doesn't matter how perfect it is. Instead, you want to make sure that you are cutting with these nice, clean lines, right? So get rid of this back and forth. That's no more, right? From this point forward, you are done making these back and forth lines. All that's happening is that your brain is basically telling you that you're very unconfident. You're moving forward, you're stopping. You're moving forward, you're second guessing it. You're moving forward, you're saying, oop, I'm lost. I'm worried. What the heck am I doing? Where am I going? Right? Even if you're getting a curve, use your wrist, use your elbow, pop up on your pinky finger, and try your best to draw a curve, right? Just like so. So you want to be able to really cut these lines, whether they're straight or anything like that. Don't be afraid to make a mess on your paper, right? Literally just work on making these kind of scratchy lines and try to get nice, clean, cut lines, nice, clean curves. Make a mess. But if they're clean lines, they're confident lines, and that's going to be important, okay? All right, so next up. On the side here, I'm going to switch over. I've got my kneaded eraser. And again, kneaded eraser is just this kind of gummy looking substance. You can rip it apart. If you ever used a normal eraser and it's gotten all black and gunky, what happens is the graphite from your pencil will eventually collect on that eraser. And so it will happen here too, except by kneading this eraser, I can basically get rid of all of that information, all of that kind of grossness, and have a clean eraser gun, right? So really easy, really nice. I've also got a very basic just pencil set here real quick. You'll notice that your pencil set arranges itself from H all the way down to HB, all the way down to B. So 8B in this case is going to be the darkest. This is a really dark, kind of charcoaly pencil. I'm not pushing very hard at all, and look at how dark it's going, right? Vice versa, I'll come up to 6H, H for kind of hardness, right? Same level of pressure, right? And look at how much lighter that is, okay? So the idea is, rather than just drawing with a number 2 pencil and having to push harder, push softer, all that, instead I can have the pencils do it for me. So I'm going to start way up on the high range here. Let's start with like a 3H. I'm going to do most of my sketching with this pencil here. You can go even lighter if you want to. I just want you to be able to see what I'm doing. And then we'll slowly darken it as we go along, adding more and more contrast. The big thing again, be careful of outlines. We don't need an outline. There are no outlines in the real world, right? So we don't need an outline around everything. We just need it where the shadow is, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and jump on in. So whenever you're drawing a hand, you want to be able to simplify that hand down into basic shapes. Everything that you draw using kind of the Loomis method is thinking in three-dimensional form. So whether it is a square, a circle, or a triangle, that triangle can become a cone, that triangle can become a pyramid, the circle can become obviously a sphere, right? Kind of go three-dimensional with that, right? The circle can also become a cylinder, 2 ovals and 2 straight lines, so kind of a circle-square combo. And then of course the square itself can become a cube. If you don't feel comfortable drawing these 5 forms, so these are shapes and these are forms. If you don't feel comfortable drawing these 5 forms, practice these before you go any further with anything else. You have to be able to think in 3 dimensions before you go any further with any of these drawing techniques. Okay, you just have to. So practice your 3D forms. If those are too challenging, practice your shapes. Go back to 3rd grade and really understand how these shapes work. Because when we're drawing the hand, for example, right? Think about how your palm is kind of this big rectangle, right? So I was drawing a hand. I could draw kind of a big old flat shape rectangle, right? I could convert that shape into a form, just like so, okay? Then I can extend these phalanges here, these little fingers, right? Now, a good kind of method is breaking this down in half. So this is equal to these fingers right there, right across the knuckles. So that means I can take this measurement, do a little comparative measurement, raise it up. That means the tip of my fingers will come right about there, assuming that my fingers are just extended, right? My fingertips will curve ever so slightly, so we can give it a little bit of a curve here. This isn't perfect, but it'll do. Okay, kind of bring this up and around, almost like a big old mitten. That looks like an ice cream bar or something like that, right? Okay, then I've got kind of my thumb, which jettisons out at this angle, almost like a 45-degree angle over here. So we're going to take that 45-degree angle and position it just off to the side. We're just going to draw like a little triangle here. So again, you can see I'm drawing with 3D form. I'm trying to think about how can I navigate this space using 3 dimensions. Right? I'm not worried about detail, I'm not worried about anything else. How can I make this kind of mitten shape so that it's a 3-dimensional form? That's the big key, right? So again, you can kind of see, here's the sides, just like so. And then there's the front, okay? Now let's keep going. I'm gonna switch to a darker color just so you can see, or a darker value. Let's go ahead down, we just did, let's do a 2H, so a little bit darker still. Of course, I've got 4 fingers going up here, so I'm just going to divide right down the middle. Okay, then divide those in half as well. Okay, now again, think about these fingers as individual cubes, and you might have drawn them before as kind of cylinder shapes, but there's a problem with cylinders. Okay, when you're drawing with a cylinder, you can't really tell where the light is coming from, right? I can go back and shade it, of course, right? But the problem is that if I'm drawing with, trying to show where the direction of the light is coming from, a cylinder wraps evenly. However, a cube, if I'm drawing a cube, very easily I can tell where the sides are, right? Really easily. So we're gonna pretend that our fingers are in fact cubes, and that's gonna allow us to really draw, each one of these digits here. Look at like this, just my index finger, right? Pretty straight across the top, and it kind of bows 1, 2, and 3. A good way to slice your finger here, if you need to figure out the length, we're going to go ahead and cut it in half. That shows our first joint. We're going to cut that in half. That shows our second joint. And then I can cut that in half as well. And that shows where my fingernail goes, right? So 1, 2, and 3, okay? Now with that, you can see again, it bows ever so slightly, right? So we're just going to draw 1, bows again, 2, bows again. 3, right? So now I can pretend that these have little hinges inside of them. That's going to allow me to bend that finger. Let's bend it, right? Look at this. Look at this. Okay. Comes down. I'm kind of imagining a radius here. So if that's bending down, let's bend this whole finger down. Okay. Just like so. And then let's say I want to bend that finger around. Get that kind of 90-degree bend. Right, again, there's a joint. Let's bend it around at this pivot point. See, I'm using these circles to kind of imagine, almost like a wheel. I'm kind of spinning these things, right? See that? 1, 2, 3. Okay? The more you understand a straight hand, the more you can start to understand how to bend it in space as well. Okay? All right, so jumping back, let's go again. So now I'm going to start to draw something that's much, much more complicated. Now that we kind of understand how these things work, right? Cutting your fingers in half gets you the first knuckle, in half again gets you the second knuckle, in half again gives you the fingernail. We know that this is a cube. We know that these little phalanges here are going to be rectangles, and each one of these joints is going to be a rectangle as well. So I want you to take your non-dominant hand and put it in some kind of position. I would suggest not a fist, that's kind of basic, and I'd also suggest not like an open palm, again, kind of boring. Do something more challenging for yourself. You know, maybe you're pointing, maybe you're kind of like, you know, clenching the air. I don't know what you're doing, but come up with a certain position. Think of the angle that you want to rotate your hand at. Again, you're drawing it from your perspective, and then take your time and start to draw this. So I'm going to go ahead and time lapse this just so you can see my process. But the idea of rectangles or using cubes, right? Bending those cubes, right? Stick with those cubes as much as possible. Then we'll come back and we'll kind of smooth things out. But stay away from cylinders. I promise you, they're not going to get you where you want to be. Okay? All right. Go ahead and give that a try, and then we'll come on back. Here we go. So at this point, it's looking pretty good. I'm happy enough with it. The big idea that we want to take away again is to think in 3 dimensions. I'm not really worried about perfect shading. We're not smudging anything. It's just a pencil. But you would definitely want to have a good sense of the directionality of the light source. That's just a good protocol. Again, a little bit of detail as far as fingernails. If you have a particular wrinkle or something you want to throw in there, go for it. You can always go back with your eraser or your kneaded eraser if you needed to, and you can always go back and kind of clean up or brighten up some of these areas to really punch up that sense of 3-dimensionality. Finally, also, you can always add a little bit of value in the background That can always help if you want to tone the paper. That can always help to give a wider variety of value. But again, the name of the game for this very first project is to think in 3 dimensions. So if you're drawing and your hand feels, you know, more like a cartoon hand, that's no good. If you're drawing and you have these back and forth kind of scratchy lines, that's no good. Go really kind of hard in those lines. It's going to really help you out. And again, think in 3 dimensions. Each one of these digits is a rectangle, right? If you're thinking rectangularly, then you're thinking 3-dimensionally, and that's where you want to be, okay? So, cubes. This whole project is all about the cube, okay? Again, it's not going to get you to photorealism, and that's not really where we're looking. Instead, we're just thinking about trying to make something feel 3-dimensional so it can kind of pop off the page. If you have questions or anything, feel free to drop me an email, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.